if deal or no deal was still a thing, the bankers just rang with an absolute humdinger of an offer. And I'm looking at Noel dead in the eye and saying, do you know what? No deal.
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the First4LCFC Podcast. My name is Jamie Thorpe and once again I'm delighted to be joined by Edward Noon and Christian Moten. How are you doing, chaps?
Good, thank you.
Very well indeed.
Good. As always on this podcast, we like to review the big Leicester City talking points from the past week, and it's going to be another bumper show coming up as we've got two big games, two very different performances, but crucially two wins as the Invisibles, as they've been coined by many other Leicester fans, in my opinion at least, very firmly put their name into the title race consideration. That might not be the view of the mainstream media just yet, but I think we are definitely in that mix. Of course, the two wins also matched and then surpassed Leicester's best ever top flight win streak. So we'll start with win number 7 and look back at the Watford game. So this was a game of contrasting fortunes, obviously. Rodgers' first game in charge of Leicester was a 2-1 loss at Watford. The two sides have definitely gone in different directions since. In 24 games since then, Leicester have taken 52 points against Watford's 15. The atmosphere was a bit drab, as you might expect, against a team that are battling relegation. Not exactly a classic, but yet Leicester got the win. So, Ed, how important is it that Leicester are managing to win ugly, as it were?
Very important. We're playing this brilliant brand of football. Many people saying the best football in the league this season, but got to accept that it's not going to happen every single week. Even the best teams have their off day, and it's classic. Was it Fergie always said it, or whoever? Like, it is a sign of a good team who isn't on tip-top form and still managed to, clean sheet 3 points, and sort of we march on, really.
Well, yeah, they did have to work hard for the game. Watford did away with their back five, went to a flat back four, and I thought the midfield too, in particular, were quite impressive. But Leicester's defence held firm, and they never really threatened us, did they? Did they, Chris? I mean, you were particularly impressed with Fuchs coming in, weren't you?
Yeah, I think in terms of not being threatened, in general, I think a lot of us probably would have predicted a similar sort of flow to the game. I think it was more that we were getting sort of maybe more congested in the attack in the third. But yeah, in terms of limiting any attacks Watford had coming towards us, I think Fuchs did a dead professional job really in terms of like a more of a traditional sort of left back. Obviously with Chilwell, we're used to a defender who's bombing forward, and that's more of a crucial aspect in his game. Whereas with Fuchs, we just had that defensive cover. I think there was that clip that was going around on social media for those who didn't watch the match, where ball comes over the top and Fuchs just deals with it so calmly. I think that's what you get from Fuchs, and it's just experience, isn't it? And I think looking forward towards the games, I don't think Fuchs is just going to be a player that steps in when Chilwell's ill or injured. I think ultimately he is going to be used as a rotation, and potentially even against the bigger clubs if we do want to just shore up that back line and keep it extra sort of tight.
It's really reassuring that someone like Fuchs can come in and have a performance like that, though, isn't it? I mean, he was up against Sarr, who is quick, and there was a lot of space in behind him, especially as we push forward. Yet, I think Sarr only got away from him once all game. He definitely had him in his pocket. He's obviously getting on a little bit now. He's 33, and his contract is in its last year. I mean, Ed, would you look at renewing it for a further year, or do you think that they're going to be left with no choice and Fuchs will leave?
I think given what he's done with the club, and if he's happy to stay another year, I think there's much worse options than to give him another a year on it. He's been there before in Europe. He's got that experience. So I certainly wouldn't be against it, but it is so good to see that we've got this strength in depth. I remember towards the start of the season, we were worried and talking about, like, if we were in Europe now, would we have the depth required? And yes, we would still need to reinforce, but we've seen in recent weeks players like Fuchs and Gray and Iheanacho and Pratt, when they've come on, they're producing the goods. And that, I can't remember another time where we had such like a plethora of playing talent on the bench who could at any stage step up without the quality of the first team like reducing significantly.
It's an interesting point you make there, because had you asked that, well, especially of me, a couple of weeks ago and said, oh, look at the bench, there's a plethora of talent on there, I would have probably, disagreed with you. And to an extent, I probably still... Sorry?
You would have scoffed at the idea.
Yeah, and the reason being that, well, to an extent, I still would now, because on paper, you'd look at them players and think, and I think we've all agreed on it, that we're relatively limited in terms of options. But what Rodgers and his coaching staff have obviously done, they've galvanised this squad. And again, no one knows what gets said behind the scenes, but whenever a player comes on this season, they're adding something to the game. So often you see substitutions made at any level, and a lot of the time there's limited impact. But this season, it just seems like there's something amongst the players, and they all come on with a point to prove, really.
I mean, like you said though as well, the depth is there, but it's using them well that is such a key point. I mean, if you look at the game against Watford, Rodgers is not afraid to use his bench, is he? I mean, he brought Pratt on at half time, which made a massive impact. Tielemans looked a little bit leggy, and yet so he brought Chowdhury on, who just added that bite and that energy in central midfield. And then Justin made his debut at the end and was a big part in us sort of seeing the game out professionally, offering that outlet as we move to a back five. So, I mean, Leicester's flexibility is something that we're going to talk about in a little bit, especially with the Villa game. But how important is it that you've got a manager that is able to not only have those options, but to use them at the right time?
Well, I think it's like you said, it's the way he's actually using his substitutions intelligently. It's not like, it's a like for like change. A lot of the time it's, tinkering with the system, it's altering the game, and it's so far sort of worked in our favour in a way that the game does change, or we sort of put our foot down, step it up a gear after the substitution. So to have a manager who is obviously predetermining and maybe even, explain to players what the actual plan is sort of before the match happens, it's obviously reassuring. It sort of just backs up the fact that Brendan Rodgers probably is, one of the best managers around at present. Yeah,
I mean, he absolutely is, isn't he? I thought the game itself was pretty unremarkable in terms of was the general feeling when we came away, but Leicester could have won that by 4 or 5. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the highlights yet. I'm not sure if it made it in, but Perez missed 2 pretty massive chances in the first couple of minutes.
That was great football in the lead up to one of them. I saw in the highlights. What, did you put it into the side netting?
Yeah, put one inside netting, and you about put the other one out for a throw in.
Well, the first one not. It was the dubious, the offside one, wasn't it? When it played on again, was it? Is that the right one?
Yeah, Perez is obviously just not a fan of VAR and figured, you know what, I'm just not going to score it.
Yeah.
Let's not bother bringing that in. But we could have done that. I mean, we had 3 times the shots Watford did. They only had 1 on target, which was in the 90th minute. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about that game. But I thought Evans was fantastic once again. But I know you'll probably think that I'm just saying this, but Harvey Barnes was brilliant.
I do think you're just saying that.
He looks good against Villa, but against Watford, I thought he was phenomenal.
It was the Harvey Barnes who hit the side netting. Sorry, not Perez. I'll correct myself.
I thought the way that he can change the impetus of the game is useful. He just has to score a bloody goal soon. I think it's affecting his confidence. But anyway, let's try and talk about something positive. So obviously, straight after that, we went down to travel to Aston Villa, a team who have sort of a mixed bag of form, but they were on the up a bit. A couple of wins in the last 5 games. Rodgers really mixed things up again with his shape. Dropped from the favourite 4-3-3 instead of a midfield diamond. So, Ed, it came with its positives, but it certainly had its negatives. And I know that you were talking about this off air. What did you make of the change in shape?
Well, to start off with, I remember we were all saying on our group chat we were a little not concerned, but just like wary that, you know, a few changes may disrupt the flow and we're not sure how it's going to work. But evidently, scoring 4 away from home and getting 3 points, it must have worked pretty well. There were a few times when I was watching, at least in the first half anyway, before we really got a complete foothold in the game, that I thought, oh, we might have got away with a chance there. I'm thinking specifically about their absolute sitter, 6 yards out, smacking it against the crossbar, and it was near enough an open goal.
No, that came moments just after, Iheanacho should have scored as well, didn't he? So it was 2 sort of massive chances there, weren't there?
So I'm just thinking, if that went differently, who knows? But, you know, ifs and buts, we got the win, and from what I hear, I wasn't able to watch the second half, but from what I'm hearing, it was much more dominant there, men against boys. So obviously words at half time shored everything up, and 4 goals away from home, 3 points, continuing the run, you really can't complain.
No, I mean, like you said, we were open a bit. I think the players were getting dragged from side to side a bit. But when we started the second half, you almost felt like Maddison and Tielemans as the 2 midfielders were just being told to stand their ground, to hold a bit more. And they just couldn't find the way through the middle. They weren't getting any change out of Pereira or Chilwell. But I mean, going forward, Chris, I mean, you can see from just from seeing the goals, the effect it has. But there's the positive side of that. What did you make of it?
I think it's a different sort of feeling watching Leicester at present. It's one I'm still getting used to, really, because we're playing this sort of fluid football that, well, I don't think we've ever witnessed as Leicester City fans. I think, you know, under Puel, you know, the aim was to keep possession, but it was just, you know, we weren't really going anywhere with it. It was a lot more negative. But now, like, it's like we get the ball and there's like 3 or 4 options on straight away. And in terms of that, obviously starts from the way we win the ball back. I might go as far as saying we're probably the most aggressive team in terms of pressing. Well, certainly in key areas of the pitch. And obviously we win the ball back, but then everyone's looking forwards. Someone I want to highlight in particular is Iheanacho. I don't know where he's got all this confidence from all of a sudden, because typically you see these players who sit out, especially players who are lacking goals, and they don't have the confidence to do what he's doing, but he's joining in the attacks. He's always looking for that overlap. Obviously, there's a different dynamic when we're playing sort of two strikers, but he was just opening opportunities. And then you've got people like Maddison, Tielemans, obviously feeding the balls through. Pratt with that delightful assist for Vardy. It just seems like we're never short of finding a pass. It's almost like we've got sort of 12 or 13 players on the pitch to the opposition's 11. It's very refreshing to see.
Yeah, I think that sort of defensive unit that you mentioned is something that Rodgers has really changed. I mean, because I know Puel, I don't know if either of you saw the interview that James Sharp, formerly of the Mercury, did with Claude Puel. But Puel seemed a little bit prickly about the lack of credit he's given with regards to. He wasn't too bad, but he didn't. I don't think he liked the fact that Rodgers was given the entire credit. But defensively, we're completely different, aren't we? I mean, we press so high with so much energy. And you're right, we've made more tackles than anyone in the league per game this season. So it really is a whole team effort.
I mean, it's interesting. I did read that article, and it's very good. It's a very good piece. And obviously, one of the key topics that came in that article was that Puel felt frustrated almost, but that's purely because of the language barrier that existed. At least that's what you were saying in the interview. I don't doubt Puel is a good manager. I said it all along, though, in terms that he's the right manager, but not in the league. I think is he with Saint-Etienne at the moment?
Yeah.
I think are they 6th or 7th in Ligue 1, which is, I don't know what their expectations are. The general consensus in France is that they're doing well, and that he's sort of found a team that suits his his style, but ultimately it suits his language as well. And I never had any sort of bad feelings towards Puel. I obviously want him to succeed, but I think fundamentally he might have taught the Leicester players more of the mental side of the game. But in terms of the way we're playing now and the more aggressive style, I don't see how there's any sort of overlap with Puel there. I think he taught us discipline, but Rodgers has taught us a different style, ultimately.
Yes, I think he started the change and started the evolution, but had taken as far as we could. One of the big things, of course, that he got wrong was his treatment of Vardy, trying to phase him out so early.
Childish Vardy,
which is, well, we won't get into that, will we? Because he's been bloody brilliant.
Be childish all you want if you're going to keep scoring.
That's
not too childish, though.
I mean, yeah, if childish is him constantly just trying to rustle up away fans, then keep doing what you're doing. So Vardy again is matched, or is coming fairly close to matching his own all-time record with 8 goals in a row. But his game against Villa was so much more than just his goal, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know, you saw most of the game, but his role as that sort of focal point of Rodgers' attack couldn't have been clearer, could it?
I don't know. I feel like we're just repeating ourselves each week, aren't we? He's just the man. Well, I guess one new thing I can add to this debate was they were talking pre-match about how Vardy's role has changed, like how much closing down he's doing. Did either of you watch the pre-match stuff? Like
No,
Carragher and interviewed Brendan Rodgers about lots of things, but one of them was about like how much closing down and how many meters he was running now compared to before Rodgers, and it was something ridiculous. Like he's just doing a fraction now, so he's being used more sparingly in that sense. But like I say, he's still leading the line. He's just being a bit more selective with what he's doing, and perhaps that's somehow made him even more effective. He really is in the form of his life, and long may it continue.
I think it is. I didn't watch that pre-match interview, but it does make sense because I've heard other snippets, on the radio, and in terms, I think some more stats relating that Vardy's fastest sprint speed has actually been recorded this season, suggesting he's not slowing down. It's more so that he's probably conserving his energy and being able to use that explosive pace. Better, really.
Well, I mean, his goal is an obvious example of that. I mean, Pratt's ball over the top was great, but it wasn't one that he could really run onto at full tilt. He almost had to slow and go again, and yet the Villa player was never within 4 or 5 yards of him, was he? He just blew him away. I mean, playing such a high line against Vardy and Iheanacho was brave.
I think in terms of the first goal? I've lost sort of track now, but obviously Mings, he'd done his hamstring, didn't he? And I think that sort of got highlighted in terms of it was the first goal because his recovery run wasn't there until it was too late, because obviously Vardy, sort of did fluff his lines first time, but he had that much time. He sort of used it as a fantastic dummy in the end. So, but
I've got
I think,
the stat. Sorry. I've got the stats up in front of me that I was on about. If you want to hear them and of interest,
always want to hear some stats.
Yeah, so minutes per tackle pre-Rodgers, 125 minutes. So like one every game and a half. Now every 269 minutes. So more than doubled. He's making one tackle every 3 matches. Touches inside the opponent's box. Before Rodgers, 10% of his touches are in the box. Now 24%. So it's gone from a tenth to a quarter. So he's getting in those areas and using his touches where he can score. Possession 1 per 90 minutes was 2.2 per game. Now it's only 1.2. So it's those like slight tweaks that is. I don't know, he's getting on the ball. Well, he's wasting less energy, but when he is on the ball and he's getting it, it's happening less so in like more out wide areas and more so in goal scoring areas.
Well, I mean, he's sort of moulded him into almost a complete striker, hasn't he? But yeah, again, like you said, we things have been going so well. We've sort of taught Vardy to death, haven't we?
Well, touches in opponent's box 2.8 before Rodgers, now 5.6. So exactly doubled since Rodgers took over. So that's where we want him getting the ball. So
exactly right. And so with the change in shape as well to the diamond, obviously one of the big things was that Iheanacho played in almost the false nine position, meaning that we were often 2-on-2 with those two going forward. So it sort of links in quite neatly to a question that we've had in on Twitter from Austin from the States, who sent us some really nice feedback as well. So thank you for that. But he has asked the question, do we still go out and buy another striker with the resurgence of Kelechi Iheanacho? So obviously he's been a different player these last two games. Do you think that we pin our hopes on him as being a backup or an alternative option for now?
I think it's an interesting one. Again, my answer is obviously it has changed ultimately, because I think you got to be careful now that Iheanacho is obviously getting back into teams, getting more minutes over the last couple of games. He's thinking, what else can I possibly do to to keep my sort of place now and get half hour, etc., if not more. So I think if we bring another a quality striker in, I think it leaves us in that predicament where we're going to have to keep, well, at least Iheanacho and probably the new striker happy. So, but then at the same time, I'm looking a bit longer term in terms of if we do get European football, I think we do need a third striker. I think the question being that I don't know the answer to is when do we buy the striker, and is January the right time? For me, I don't think January is the right time for two reasons. One, for the reason I've just mentioned, and two, just for the January premium that you end up paying for players. I think, again, I'm not 100% sure on the contracts running down and stuff, but potentially there could be like a more of a sort of European veteran knocking around that we could buy purely the fact he's free and also for that experience, and we could probably get him in the summer is what I'd be siding with at the moment.
I mean, Ed, do you agree? Do you think that, do you think we even need to buy one?
Well, to be honest, I think if we're going to give him a shot, let's not give him 2 matches and then say, you'll go knock him down the pecking order further. I'm like, let's give him a shot to the end of the season and see where we're at. Like, I know it's a stupidly small sample size, but he has got 4 goals and 2 assists in 177 minutes this season. Like, he's doing all right. If we're desperate for another striker, could always say Vardy gets injured and we wanted to play 2 up front, we could play Iheanacho and Perez and start Gray or Albrighton out wide instead. One thing we could do if we wanted to add another player would be to sign a winger. So then you've got a little bit more flexibility. So you've got, I don't know, I've been harping on about Jared Bowen, but if we signed him, for example, then you've got, he can play out wide and up front. Perez can play out wide and up front. Iheanacho can kind of play as the main man up top, but slightly behind as well.
I think
Gray can do both,
The only thing I'd question there is you are ultimately naming players who can play up front, but that's not their position. So the obvious argument would be like, got a load of like people who can do a couple of things, but not an out and out sort of number 9, if you like, which I don't know, whether we could develop a player to that or it's just a case of sort of, it's just a bit of a gamble, isn't it? Perez, all them players you've sort of mentioned, that in their whole career they've never really been, prolific.
Yeah, but I just think, like, whilst we've got who we've got with Vardy up front, it's kind of like, if we're going to give Iheanacho a shot, I don't see any value in signing another striker to compete with the two. I think if we want to add someone to compete, we'd sign someone who can play out wide, who can, if needed, also play up front.
Yeah, I mean, I get your point, and I'm not outright disagreeing with you. But again, my point being that if, and God forbid, Vardy does get injured, then we're sort of left with, a load of semi-strikers, if you like. And another point being like, Well, I guess comparing us with Man City, they bought Jesus. I'm not sure how many seasons ago. I think he's only 22 now, and he's finally sort of, he's taken the. Well, obviously Aguero's injured, but he is a quality striker ultimately who has been on the sidelines for a while. And another question I've got is, if we say, let's fast forward to next season and we're in a Champions League, are you? And let's talk about the knockout stages. Like, our squad, it is lacking depth, and like if you look at the teams that go to the latter stages of the Champions League, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to argue they've probably got more than one top class striker in their squad as well.
I don't know. If I want to play devil's advocate, look at the two teams who made the final last year. Both of them have a striker and no real backup.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just one season over. I was maybe if you look at obviously not going to do it now. I've not researched it, but if the quarterfinalists or
I'm going to say only really Man City have more than one credible striker out of all the big English teams.
No, I wasn't on about English. I was just on about the Champions League in general, just using Europe as a step up. That right now we have got a relatively thin squad, and now to compare us to another team like Wolves, who have now pieced together a fantastic run. Relatively speaking, I think 11 games unbeaten now. They were getting found out at the start of the season slightly because of a relatively thin squad, and that could come back to bite them later on in the season. So yeah, like you said, we've discussed it before, and maybe there's just other positions we should be backing up, but Vardy isn't getting any younger, and we will have to come to a time where we're going to have to get a backup for probably Iheanacho or something. So yeah, I guess for me it's when, not if, we need to get another striker.
Yeah, I think I think you're right, but I think Iheanacho for us this season can almost be something like a new signing, almost like a bonus signing, because I think that, I mean, it's fair to say that I wrote him off at the start of this year. I think a few people probably were in the same boat, but the confidence that he's playing with and the way that he plays in a different way to Vardy really gives me confidence that he can come on and actually contribute when it matters. He came on against Everton under a lot of pressure and did the business, didn't he? So whilst it's still early, it is quite encouraging to see. But let's just hope that he can continue like that, because, like I said, it is early. In terms of the squad depth overall, though, obviously we saw a little bit of rotation in the Villa game with players like Pratt coming on. Now centre midfield is an area that we really do not lack depth with it. I thought Pratt was brilliant against Villa. I mean, Ed, what did you make of his performance?
I said to Chris a few weeks ago, and I can't remember if I said this on the podcast or not, because it's a bit of an odd thing to say, but is he the best sub we've ever had?
You did. I think you said that last week on the podcast.
Was it on the podcast? All right. It's just how you pronounce it in Holland. Yeah, it's just it's odd because our midfield's that strong. If you had your first team, he probably wouldn't get in, but he's such a good player, and if you were to rotate him out, or I've seen some people say Tielemans hasn't been on his 100% A game, so let's rotate him out for a couple of games. It's if that happened, if that happened a couple of years ago when our star midfielders weren't on form, you'd be a bit concerned with Mendy or, God knows, James or whoever coming on. But now it's oh, okay, no worries, his class.
Well, I think it's an interesting one, because I think I wouldn't be surprised if Tielemans isn't even in the squad for Norwich. I've seen a couple of things. Well, obviously nothing incredible, but just in terms of what you're getting at, is he due a break? And we've got a more than capable, just straight replacement in Pratt. And if you're talking about obviously looking ahead over the Christmas period, Norwich at home, not being dismissive, but on paper that's the one you want to probably rest him in terms of the league games, and then probably maybe just put him on the bench for Everton. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if Pratt gets the start over Tielemans against Norwich. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy here that's, he's a Belgian international. He's only 25, so he's really going to be hitting his stride in the next couple of years. But he plays in a slightly different way, doesn't he? He's not quite as energetic in a lot of ways, but he's just the calmness and the sort of influence that you need to see a game out. I wouldn't describe him as a super sub. He's not one of those that lives on the bench and just comes off for 10 minutes every game, but he's definitely, you're right. I think you're right in terms of a player that's been brought off the bench recently. He's probably one of the best options we've ever had. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago, like I said before, that we had Gary Taylor-Fletcher coming on to play in centre midfield. So we have
Big
moved
player.
Yeah, very, very good. Well done. Nearly didn't realise what you were doing there. One of the other questions I had as well, because it was highlighted on Twitter before the game quite a lot, was the fact that it was GREALISH up against MADDISON, in terms of two players that are bigged up by their fans, obviously, about having good seasons. MADDISON's come out on top, hasn't he? But I'd be interested to get your thoughts on GREALISH and how he performed.
I think GREALISH is he's a class operator, but I think he needs to learn to control his temperament, and I think that could be a reason that he is getting overlooked for the England setup, because I think Southgate's relatively pragmatic. You only have to watch a Villa match, as I don't watch Villa a lot. I watched them yesterday, and he's losing his head, or he's obviously getting rattled easily, like the incident with Ndidi. I don't know. He's a great player, and maybe it is just frustration that he's in a weak team. Obviously, surrounding him with better players, and he's probably not going to be getting as frustrated. But I think MADDISON's just carrying himself a lot better. Again, it's down to temperament. He's obviously hot-headed. He doesn't. I don't think he controls that well enough, though, and I think that's something he needs to work on, because he is ultimately he's probably going to get sent off this season for something, along those lines.
Do you take him at Leicester?
I think I would, and for that reason. And this isn't me thinking about the system or how he's going to fit in, etc. But I would take him, and I do think, a lot of his temperament is down to the fact that he's a bit frustrated that he can probably see things that the players around him can't, and that's I rate him. I do think he's a class player. He's the most fouled player for the second season running now. And there's a reason for that. He's good on the ball, and he's on the ball a lot ultimately as well, which is a big thing for any midfield player.
Well, I said last week that I wouldn't be surprised if Villa went down, if we did make a move for him. They were talking on commentary about how he's tight with Chilwell and MADDISON, and they've been playing together for years, and he's just. To me, it makes sense. If we are going to be in the Champions League, and we do, as Chris will hope, we take cup competition seriously as well. That MADDISON won't be able to play every game, and
I just don't know if GREALISH would come as a. I think it. I know what you're saying, but I think it's almost offensive to him as well to suggest he'd come and have to work his way into a team. I think there's teams in the Premier League he's going to walk into, and one of them is someone like Arsenal. I don't know. It is interesting. Obviously, he's mates with MADDISON, like you said, Chilwell and that. But for me, if there's a few offers on the table, yes, Champions League, etc. But I can't help but think he just wants to play football, especially from being a club captain to probably being a bench warmer. I don't know how it is for a professional footballer, but that would be very frustrating for me.
I mean, for what it's worth, I'd take him in a heartbeat. I think when he picked the ball up in space and he sort of drove from the wing, cutting in and driving in at the centre of our defence, I was worrying. He definitely carried the most threat in that Villa side. Whether that's just because they looked a bit average outside, I don't know, but. He's sort of one of those players that you feel could conjure something up from nowhere, which is arguably what we need again.
He's sort of old school players, isn't he? I mean, I'm not just talking about the
his socks are old
sock cliche, but he's just the way he just sort of floats, and I guess you only really use that term when you're talking about players like Zidane and stuff. And I'm no way comparing the two at all.
Are you comparing GREALISH to Zidane?
Ed, you're just looking for a soundbite. Come on now.
Yeah.
But I just think it's the way he is. He just seems he's one of these players that manages to. It looks like he's got 20 yards around him all the time. Again, he's obviously floating. He's clever, looking for play, looking for space. But the only other feedback which I got from my girlfriend when she was watching him was that he needs to sort his hair out. But I'm not sure whether that's going to alter him being a target for us or not.
I mean, I was going to say that, but I'm really dancing on thin ice with that one, aren't I? So I'll leave that to it. But I think the main takeaway is that Jack Grealish is the next Zidane. Chris Motion 2019. You heard it here first. I'd like I said, I'd have him, but I think we'd have to pay a lot, certainly in January.
I'd be surprised if they stay up. I'd be surprised if he left.
You defo leave if they go down.
Well, yeah, if they go down, I think he will. But given that it's his club and he's captain and everyone loves him there, like, I would be Villa would. Well, before even it got to him, like, Villa would demand like mega bucks, wouldn't they? Which would probably count us out. Like, I'd imagine, given the money in the Premier League at the minute, to another Premier League club arrival, you're probably looking at like 60-70 million pounds.
Well, it pains me to say, but again, another team that you can probably walk into, well, for me anyway, is Spurs as well. Again, whether or not what he wants to choose is his thing, or whether he's even a Mourinho type of player, who knows? But I think basically, if he is moving, he's not going to be short of interest. But yeah, I would like to see him at Leicester as long as it somehow work.
Absolutely. So after those two games, the bottom of the table is extremely tight. Watford cut adrift a bit on 9, but from between 18th and 8th, there's only 7 points separating them all. So it's hard to call who's going to get dragged into it. But obviously, our interest is higher up the table. So after that, every Leicester fan listening to this will know, but I'll go through it anyway. So we're 8 points behind Liverpool, 6 ahead of Man City in 3rd, 9 ahead of Chelsea in 4th, and crucially, ahead of Wolves and Man U in 5th and 6th. We've got 14 points. It's a massive gap. The big one that everyone's been talking about, and it does feel like there's been a bit of a change in perception after the Villa game. But are we in it, guys? Are we now willing to say, yeah, we're tied to race time?
I'm jumping in. You don't need to invite me to talk about this, Jamie. Actually, for me, we are 100% in it, and like, it's not even about what typically. Obviously, it is about what we're doing, but like, why can't we be in it? If it was any other team who was in our position, you'd be considering. Well, I personally would be considering them in a title race. I think it's every time you listen to the radio or watch TV, it's almost like we are invisible sort of thing. But I think that personally works in our favour. But then Liverpool, they're just historically a club that bottles it. Then like they've literally never won the Premier League in the modern era of the Premier League. Like for everyone to be backing them as if it's a cert is. Look at the history. They flapped it once before with the man who's in charge of us now. Like, history suggests that it's far from nailed on for me, but I'm sure Ed's going to offer a lot more of a pragmatic, sensible view.
Why? I'm not even going to bother saying anything. Ed, go on, jump in.
I feel like here's a little change of tune, but I'm going to disappoint you in the end and stick to my guns. But if the fixture lists were different and things are exactly as they are now, I would say I'd just about feel comfortable in saying we are now. However, I don't feel any value in making that prediction, given that in the next 3 matches we play Man City and Liverpool. Because we could, in 3 games' time, be out of it. In 3 games' time, we could be where we are now. In 3 games' time, we could be as close to within 5 points. It could be even more if Liverpool drop points. So I feel that the classic, they are 6-pointers and they're back-to-back. Like, it's boom, boom. What's the point in making a prediction now and saying, yeah, we're in it, and then in 2 weeks' time, we're completely out of it? So I'll stick to my guns and say, after those 2 fixtures, I will come on to the following podcast and make a firm prediction.
I don't think.
Where
Have you
I
ever
think
checked
we'll
your
finish.
arse for splinters, like ever?
Yeah, that's my.
I haven't, I'll be honest, but
Because
I just don't see the point in
to
saying we
regular
are
listeners,
now.
this is turning into a regular debate. But what you're literally saying is, I'm willing to make a prediction when it's a lot safer to do so. Like, I think surely, like, if I literally gave you like £100 and you had to put a bet on the outcome, surely you can make a
Yeah, I would
right
say I
now.
don't think we are, because I think we will drop points in at least one of those matches. I think if we get 6 points, we are definitely in the race, 100%.
What about if we get 3 points, but Liverpool drop 3 points in that other game?
Well, if we beat Liverpool, where are you saying the 3 points are from? The Liverpool.
I'm basically saying if the gap remains 8 points out the other side of it, and we.
I'd say we'd be clinging on, but yeah, I'd say we are.
No, I'm just being a bit of a twat with that last question, but yeah.
No, it's true. Yeah. It's true. Like, I just think, like, well, if you want me to say it right this second, yeah, we are. Like, simply put, we are. But to say it confidently, knowing that in a couple of weeks, given the fixtures, everything could have changed, I don't see that much value in it.
Oh yeah, fair enough. It's obviously it's an opinion nonetheless, but I think, like, I just think that Man City are there for the taking, and in terms of like home or away advantage, I don't think there's such a thing as home advantage for Man City. We went over there, turned them over like in our title winning season, and yeah, we haven't been as successful since. But I just think if we do go there high on confidence, that's the first game out of the 2. We get something out of that. We're going to be absolutely on flames by the time we get to Liverpool. Like, that's going to be such a cracking game to watch. I'm actually getting aroused by it right now.
Mental image for all you people listening on the podcast. I mean, who would have thought though that heading into the Man City game, Liverpool will be watching that, and they arguably won't know how they want that to go.
Yeah, they may be cheering on like Man City.
There will be people cheering on Man City. There is a section of Liverpool's fan base that view us as proper challengers now.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially if Man City drop more points between then and now. Like, they're probably one bad result from being completely out of it. In their game before, their next match is Arsenal away. So it's, whilst Arsenal are not in form even close, it's not exactly
I'm just watching the Arsenal game now, and they've suddenly turned into like some world-class outfit. It's 3-1. They've switched it around in about 5 minutes.
3 goals in 9 minutes, according to Flash Score.
But yeah, the points remain the same. But Pep Guardiola just strikes me as a sort of manager who, if he's playing Football Manager, he rage quits and restarts the game. And what I see happening with his team this year is that he wants to do that. And little things will keep biting away at him. And I think Moson's mad claim of this week's podcast is Pep Guardiola will not be Man City manager by the end of the season, because it's just one of those. Everywhere he goes, he's been used to sort of monopolising the league, if you like. But like even players like David Silva and people who were ever so reliable in the past, it's just something ain't ticking for them. Like, they definitely can't defend. And again, I'm not sure. I'm not going to put full responsibility at Pep's sort of doorstep, but can he coach a team to defend? Like, he could go out and buy the world's best defenders, but ultimately, are his tactics just getting found out now? And I fancy Rodgers to do a number on him, to be fair.
I'm looking forward to Vardy going up against Fernandinho. Don't get me wrong.
Well, it's not even that. I fancy him against Stones. I fancy him, whoever they might play at the back, because that's what I mean. These players, when they... Well, not Fernandinho. I mean, he's in the wrong position, obviously, and getting on a bit. But like Stones, he was touted as to be like the next big thing. But if anything, he's regressed from being under Pep. So
the next Iheancho.
So yeah, so let it be a lesson for any players who want to be targeted by Man City that you're probably not going to develop under Pep as a defender, and that, obviously he's a world class manager, but I think he's getting found out this season. To be fair, and I fancy it. Fancy at least a win there.
But then, let's say we're talking some hypotheticals there. Let's say we do win that, then if it's still entirely dependent on the Liverpool result if we're in a title race. Like let's say we beat Man City but lose to Liverpool and the gap's 11 points and we're halfway through the season.
What lead did Liverpool blow famously again?
Opens Google.
Well, it's not even. I'm not doing it to catch you out, and I'm not saying that.
11 points.
Well, does lightning strike twice? I don't know, but I'm finding that Liverpool fans are fast becoming one of the most irritable set of fans I know. And I thought Spurs fans took some beating. Celtic fans definitely take some beating. But Liverpool fans are soon. Read any Twitter thread or Facebook, whatever you use, and you'll find some cretins in there. And they're definitely.
It was 7 points. Sorry, they lost a 7-point lead in 7-point lead in 4 games. So.
I mean that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hold out for that to be the case again, but the point remains the same that they are historically, as a club, not actually that successful in the Premier League era.
I mean,
gonna have a Slippy Hendo moment.
Quite a few Liverpool fans getting a bit rattled by us and sort of picking up on our players and trying to talk about stats and why we won't do it, why we won't keep it going. And I think that does show that we are in the mix, if nothing else.
Well, I'll give them a little stat, seeing as they've got the world's greatest defender on their books. That well, if stats are to be believed, don't quote me on this, but I did read that between Virgil van Dijk, Joel Matip and Joe Gomez, they've got a combined 29 tackles between them. Not sure what the time frame is, whereas Richarlison of Everton's got 41 on his own. So I'm not sure. I do rate Virgil van Dijk, but defensively, they've conceded more than us. So it's hard for me to disagree that we've got the best defence unit at the moment.
I think the next month, and more sitting on the fence, sorry, but the next month is massive. Like Liverpool have got some really hard games as well. Like fair enough, they've got Watford at home this weekend, so should get 3 points. But after that, their run is Leicester away, Wolves, Sheffield United, Spurs, Man U all in the league. So there's games there that aren't like 100% guaranteed results.
This is what I mean. So that's interesting you mentioned that. Let's use Spurs and Man U as the examples. And I'm no advocate of Manchester United or Spurs, but say we did lose to Man City and to Liverpool. What if Liverpool then went on to lose their next 2 games that we won? That would put us back in the same position with half the season to go.
I don't know. There'd be like 10 games left. Well, that's a lie. 10 or 12 games left at that
18
point.
18 games left.
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
15, yeah.
Half points. No, I think it'd probably be too late by then. I think we really can't afford to lose against Liverpool. Is the sitting on the fence moral of the story? Sorry.
I mean,
I don't think we will. There you go.
One of the other ways of looking at it, which is one of the questions that we've had on Twitter from Mark, was that are the media being disrespectful of Leicester when it comes to being title challengers, as most of the media are talking about the gap between Liverpool and Man City instead of second place Leicester City. Why are we not being taken seriously? So I suppose that comes back to sort of what you were saying, Ed. But there has been a bit of that in the media, haven't they? The emphasis has certainly been on Manchester City instead of Leicester City.
Oh, I think Liverpool, the names, it sells more papers, gets more people watching. They've got bigger fan bases. Like maybe I'm just being overly critical, but like until we are really in your face and there's no other competition, it's probably going to remain that way. until they'll milk as much as they can out of the perhaps more attractive names as long as they can, and I'm fine with that. If it gets to the point where we're closing the gap, they'll have no choice but to focus on us. But for now, it doesn't affect me one jot.
No.
I think it's an interesting one. I don't know, like obviously you used the term media. I think it depends where you're looking, because if you look at a credible journalist, like I was reading the Times today, and I know that's very credible. They had on their sports pullout, they had a massive, most the whole front page was about Leicester City. So again,
an actual newspaper. Sorry, I thought you meant like a website.
No, in the dentist, flicking through the paper.
Through.
And definitely Vardy on his knees. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, the point being that if you listen to stuff like TalkSport, obviously I listen to TalkSport, but I think they've got agendas to fit. They know that I don't know what their targets are, but to get a reaction out of certain groups of fans, they got to say certain things. It's manipulation, isn't it? You listen to like absolute idiots like Jason Cundy. They're never going to say anything positive about Leicester City. Again, to wind up Leicester City fans, you got to think about it. It's their job. I don't personally get drawn into. I know Jamie does. He's got his fishing rod out, and he also nibbles on a lot of bait on Twitter. So maybe you should ask you, Jamie. How do you see the media, and how does it affect you as a Foxes fan?
Speaking about nibbling, I made the mistake of saying that Ferrer was better than Trent Alexander-Arnold, and my phone has not stopped going off tonight. Liverpool fans really, really don't like that. Then I dragged Wan-Bissaka in it as well, and it's just been.
No, to be fair, I did see that, and I semi-agree with you. Trent is not a great defender, but Wan-Bissaka is a significantly better defender than Trent for me. But I saw what you were getting at, and I was never going to go well when you're going against the Liverpool fans.
Could not resist the chance. But no, I think when it comes to the media, I think that it certainly has. The spotlight has definitely been more on Manchester City. Certainly when you're talking about stuff like Sky Sports, the way that they've sort of framed the losses in. I think even one radio station I listened to, I can't remember which one it was, almost seemed to forget we were there, which is why I sort of called them the Invisibles at the start. It was something that they had been coined a little bit on Twitter and on Facebook. But I think the good thing is that I'm sort of happy for it to be like that. And Rodgers said it himself as well, that he's very happy for Leicester to be left out the chat about the title, because no one expects us to be there. And he just says, well, we're just trying to play and improve our performance levels, be professional, keep our feet on the ground, which I think is exactly the way that you need to go, right? Like, it's just let's stay out of the spotlight, but keep doing what we're doing. I mean, the records keep tumbling. The performances are still brilliant. I mean, our last 4 away games, there's a little stat here. I know you love a stat. We've won our last 4 away games 17-1.
Yeah, I heard that.
It's ridiculous. That's Villa's heaviest defeat there since 2016. And this is great. Since Rodgers took over, Vardy has scored 25 goals, which is 8 more than any other player in the same period. Like, it's, things that we're on the up. So whilst
it's worth mentioning, that's 25 and 26 as well. That's that's firepower,
which is absolutely ridiculous.
That's bags, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a cash return. But in terms of, just to summarise what you said there, Jamie, is that, does it not just suit us? Does it not do Brendan Rodgers' job for him? Look, you don't even need to do a team talk. He just pins up all these sort of, well, metaphorically speaking, headlines about how Leicester aren't in the title race, how it's always Man City. Just say, look, lads, the media don't fancy you. Go and prove them wrong. Like, that is as easy as that for me. So I think every Foxes fan would probably be in agreement that, you write us off at your own, your risk.
Absolutely. I mean, Arsenal learnt that the hard way, didn't they? With the photos surfaced of them all celebrating the late win against us in February of the title-winning season. I think they literally did pin that up on the wall. And the players have been quoted saying, and they saw that every day, and it really gave them the fire to go forward. So yeah, write us off at your peril. But talking about the top 4 and where we sit, an interesting question from Rich Kinnaird, who often contributes questions to this podcast. So thank you for that, Rich. Asks, would you take third place right now?
Fucking hell.
I mean, that's a tough one because I get the feeling I know where Ed is going to stand on that, and I know where I stand in that.
I think Ed's in the process of driving to your house and ripping your arm off.
There's a difference between me saying I'd take it and me saying that is my lowest aspiration. I think those two results go well, we're in with a shot for really going for it.
Rich is asking right now.
Yeah, I would
needs an answer.
I'd say if I was to look at the bookies, that probably is the bookmakers where we're expected to finish now. I'd imagine.
Yeah, well, I don't know actually.
I'll have a look now and get back to you. What do you think, Chris? Would you take?
I know what the odds were prior to the weekend.
Would you take it?
No. Gamble. If deal or no deal was still a thing, the bankers just rang with an absolute humdinger of an offer, and I'm looking at Noel dead in the eye and saying, do you know what? No deal. So let's proceed. I think third, there's still big boxes out there, and I'm going for the 250 grand cash jackpot, thanks.
This is a brilliant metaphor, by the way. Like, you're going back like 4 or 5. Is that show even still on air?
It's not. I don't think it's been on for about 4 or 5 years. I remember watching it after school.
Oh yeah, no. Obviously, I was watching it after work. Right.
TV when Jamie was at school.
Yeah. Yes. For no one that knows, I am about a year older than these two clowns, and yet you'd have thought I was about ready to draw my pension.
Would you like me to tell you what the odds are?
Please do.
Right, to win. This is what I've got. Not top 4, but to win. Liverpool 7-1 on. Fair enough at the minute. Man City 7-1. Leicester 14-1, nice. And then Chelsea 250-1. So it's quite close. Between Leicester and Man City relatively, but after that there's a big drop off. So,
I think just to make it clear why I was scoffing at the question is that obviously what I'm getting at is that I think we're capable of better than third. I'm not even saying about the title. I think for as long as we are within what I regard as touching distance of Liverpool, then I wouldn't settle for third. But coming second is obviously better than coming third. And I think we can definitely go.
That is true, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how it affects like UEFA seedings or anything regarding that. But I just think that Man City are more likely to keep dropping points, and who knows, could even get sucked in to a fourth place battle. And that's not to say we won't, but I'm just saying that there's probably a lot more football left to be played for second place.
Yeah. I think in summary though, if I'd side with Ed. If you offer me third place right now, I'm taking it and saying thank you very much. That's a hell of a season. We're on a European tour. Players you can get in. Absolutely magic.
Jadon Sancho.
I don't like being off the fence. It's a bit strange, actually. I'm going to get back on it. Right. One of the other questions that we were asked, obviously the good news this week that Rodgers signed a new deal with a much greater wage for him, probably a significant increase in the compensation that we would demand should he ever leave. So the question that we had was, with Rodgers signing a new deal, as well as Maddison being mooted to as well, is this just showing good intent, or are we simply trying to maximise the value that we would get for when they do inevitably leave us?
I think it's just good management of a football club. Something that I'm an advocate of in terms of comparing us to teams like Arsenal or probably just Arsenal in recent times, whereby they've let players run out of the contracts. They've done a shambles of appointing these big name managers, whereas we sort of do things the right way. And in some cases, like if Maddison was to sign a new contract, for me, that's bigger than any signing we could possibly get in January. Whether or not be because we can then just demand more money, or just purely because it shows that we've got chairman and a board that is actually looking out for, one, the fans' best interests, but also, two, for the longevity of the playing staff. and just doing things the right way, really. Like, I'm only going to guess that I think I've read that Rodgers has doubled his salary to £10 million, which is very, very tidy. But also that he's probably going to be demanding like a world record sort of release fee. Because what was it before? 14 million. And if you just put it in perspective, like if you were offering a world class player for £14 million, then there'd be a queue of clubs coming in for him, and it should be no different for a manager. But yeah, no, I think I think the way we're doing things and the way we're looking to do things is bang on correct.
The difference there is something I was reading on Twitter actually about like compensation for managers and why it's so low versus a player when managers can arguably offer a lot more. So when you think about it, you know, players have sell-on value. Like simply put, like the vast majority of managers in the game end up having to be paid to leave. So it's a bit more risk to put a lot of money on the table for a manager and pay a lot when, you know, they may have to pay that again just to get rid of them. It's not like it's very rare to sell a manager compared to a player. So based on that, that sort of shaped my view on this. Like, I do think Rodgers is more of a, you know what, Brendan, you've done a great job. Keep it up. We want you to stay here, some extra money. Whereas whilst I think the same, to some extent, it's the same with Maddison. I think it'd be naive to suggest none of that decision to give him a new deal was out of concerns that he'd be getting paid more elsewhere.
I think it bodes well that both of them have chosen to sign on. I mean, obviously Rodgers is confirmed. Maddison is likely to be happening if you believe the reports. So I think it bodes well. I mean, we said last week that I can't see why you'd leave Leicester at the moment anyway. I think there's only two clubs in the Premier League that could tempt Rodgers at the moment. And as much as I love watching Arsenal fans, the pundits and all these people fall over themselves to say, yeah, Rodgers is coming, Leicester are nobody's. Why wouldn't you leave? Blah, 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 blah. It's extremely heartwarming to see that they were all completely wrong. So Paul Merson, Chris Sutton, all of those lot you can stick with.
Harry Groves.
Yeah, we've got 16 more points than Arsenal. Just a little fact for you. After 16 games, keep this up. And
there's a bit of me that wants to dig through the archives and go back to like after 5 or 6 games in the season. I can always guarantee Ed was sitting on the fence about Arsenal, but I'm not going to do that and insert it right now.
I think, my thinking was there's a difference between, you know, sometimes better teams can have a rubbish run and then they pull the finger out and turn. You know, we may have started seeing that with Spurs recently. I know they lost to Man U, but, you know, every other game they've done well. But Arsenal just haven't seemed to be able to put a run of fixtures, run of results together. So they do look like if anyone's going to drop out with the big boys, it's going to be them. And you know what? Couldn't happen to a nicer group of fans.
And look, the grass isn't always greener, is it? As well, there was a great tweet doing the rounds about the fact that you can look at the table another way. Leicester are 6 points clear of Mahrez, 9 clear of Kante, 14 clear of Maguire, and 20 points clear of Drinkwater. So the grass.
You got Jeff Peters for that
one. Yeah, I think he might have nicked it actually. But yeah, I won't get into that. Not picking sides.
Well, here's a fun stat for you. Leicester, Arsenal have won 5 games this season. We've won 5 in the last 5, and the 5th one of that run was actually against Arsenal themselves. So we've won 5 in. We've won 5.
It's a great stat when you have to explain the stat.
Yeah.
I've been mispronunciating my worms, but yeah, the 5th game of that run was against Arsenal. So yeah, they're rubbish. Next.
Can you clarify who the 5th game of that run was against?
Let me 1, 2, 3, 4. It was Arsenal.
Oh, Arsenal. Okay,
It was 2-0. 2-0.
You really need to make that clear at the start. Right. So look, let's look
Arsenal.
ahead.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of the hypotheticals now. So it's about whether Leicester can indeed keep this run going. Their next opportunity is against Norwich, obviously. So they're sat in the relegation zone, 11 points from their 16 games so far. They started rather well with Pukki sort of propelling them forward, but they've just dropped like a stone since. Chris, I mean, how do you see the game going? I mean, we've got to be confident, but is there anyone in particular in their side, for example, that you think we need to be aware of?
Well, you just mentioned the main man. From watching Norwich, is it Cantwell? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Good little player. But I don't know, like, I mean, Sheffield United have just gone and turned them over on their own patch of land. I just don't see. I mean, strange things happen in football, but I just don't see. I can't like fathom how Norwich are going to come to us and beat us. I don't even know if they're going to set up that sort of negatively, or if they're just going to come and have a go. I don't know. For me, I can't really see it going any differently to sort of the way the Watford game went. That it might be a bit tricky in terms of then they might come with a real point to prove. But I think ultimately, like, class has to just prevail in the end, and I really do struggle to see anything other than another win for us.
Ed, do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, they're crap.
They leave it there.
Yeah, they just lost to Sheffield United. They lost before that to Southampton. They couldn't even beat Arsenal. Like, nah, this has got like 3-0. 3-0, and we'll bring off some players nice and early, have a rest. Vardy will be off.
So, I mean, I think you need to make sure that we soundbite the even Arsenal bit, because that'll go down really well. I mean, they're struggling they're scoring goals not exactly freely. They've got one of the worst attacking records in the league. They're conceding goals for fun as well. But I mean, it's the Premier League, though, isn't it? I mean, you can't write them off completely, can you?
Ed has. I'm going to be a bit more. Just purely because the reason that one, football obviously isn't paid on paper. Two, we just due, like, I don't think it's going to happen, but like, how long can any run carry on for with it being so swimming? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but was Joa's earthquake goal not against Norwich?
Yeah, it was.
There's just certain things. Maybe it's my superstition. There is something in the back of my mind thinking that it's not going to be plain sailing, but I hope I'm wrong.
2-0 up after 15 minutes.
Right.
Sorry, that's just me thinking out loud.
No. As you're in the mood for predictions, Ed, let's hear your actual one for the game, please.
3-0, and it'll be 3-0 by half time. 3 substitutions on 55 minutes just to...
That's definitely not going to happen. There's 3 substitutions on 55 minutes would be the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in a professional football match in a long time.
the most bizarre thing.
3, well...
Yeah, Mark Albrighton because he fancies a game. Wes Morgan because he's a club legend, have a run out. And Damari Gray because... You know what? Have a go. This is your chance to prove again. Get some minutes in ahead of the Everton game. And there's the segue to this. Oh, if you want to discuss that. Was that next week?
Don't try and do Jamie's job for him.
Yeah, Chris did that last week, and I didn't get over that for a long time. Okay, so let's not be doing that again.
May shock you, actually.
Go on then.
From what I've just said, I still stand by what I've said. Don't get me wrong. I do think we can get potentially frustrated. And I think at half-time, it could be scoreless. However, I do think we are going to just turn it on. I do think we're going to win by 3. I'm going to say 3-0, but all coming in the second
Can't do that.
Game.
You got to pick a unique score.
It's just something you're obsessive with, but okay, then I will go 3-1. I think all the goals will come in the second half, and I don't think there'll be a triple sub with club captain Wes Morgan warming up on 55 minutes.
If that happens, when we do eventually watch the Man City game on the 21st, I fully expect you to straight arm a pint or something, because that would be ridiculous. Could you imagine?
Give me a biscuit.
Yeah, anyone who listens to the podcast, turn up, please watch. I want to say 2-1. No, I don't. I want to say 2-0, but you said that, haven't you?
No, I've said
No, you
3-1.
can't. 2-0 is available.
Oh, I will have 2-0. I think it will be. I'm not. I think he'll go back. He'll revert back to the wingers. I think that because it places less load on the midfielders, and it would. I think Tielemans will start again. Pratt will drop back to the bench, but even so, I think we will win that game hopefully without having to get out of second gear.
We've scored 2 goals in our last 4 home games.
Well,
there's a stat. There you go.
We scored, was it in each match?
Yeah, 2 against Watford, 2 against Everton, 2 against Arsenal, 2 against Burnley.
Well, there you go. I accidentally knew what I was talking about. Well, fingers crossed. And obviously, this is the time in the podcast where I ask you if there's any other business from you guys.
I think so, to be fair, Jamie. I think you've done a sterling job of leading this ship that we called the First4LCFC Podcast on this evening.
Should we do a shout out that if anybody's still listening,
yes,
could you subscribe to us on all your standard podcast places, like on the Apple iTunes podcast thing? Leave a comment as well. We do enjoy reading them. Go on.
I was just going to say we have had some really good feedback this week. We asked for it last week. Loads of people tweeted us or sent us messages direct, and it was really good to hear that people actually do find us even remotely interesting. And people from all over the world listen to this podcast, so it does make it worthwhile, doesn't it? I know, Ed, you were probably going to take the piss somehow, but on a serious note, we really do appreciate it. Ed, what were you going to say?
I was going to say nothing, like, genuinely, like, it does help with whatever, like, getting us more recognition to give us like and comment, and, you know, like you say, it's always cool to actually get responses from, doesn't matter if you're from Leicester or, I don't know, New Delhi. Like, if you're listening, that's awesome. Like, let us know you're enjoying it, and if you do have any questions, hit us up and we'll discuss them at length next time.
Absolutely. And that seems a good thing to wrap it up on. I'm going to do it before Chris nips in. If you haven't made it this far, as always, thank you. And this has been quite a bumper episode. I think it's going to come quite near to the record. It's always fun doing it, but thank you very much for listening. Please do send your questions in. We'll try our best to get Ed off the fence. We'll probably try our best to get Chris somewhere near the fence. But
right
no,
near.
and please tune in next week, and hopefully we will finally have an answer on whether Ed thinks we are in fact in a title race. But thank you for listening.
Bye bye.